All right, let's paint a picture. It's 326 BC. You're standing at what feels like the very edge of the world. And right here, the greatest conqueror history has ever known is about to face his toughest challenge yet. This isn't just another battle. It's a clash that's going to test his genius like never before and, honestly, change the course of history for two different worlds. I mean, for years, Alexander the Great had just been this unstoppable force of nature, right? He'd carved out an empire that stretched all the way from Greece to the front door of India. His army, probably the most effective fighting machine on the entire planet. But when he marched into India in 327 BC, he was up against something totally new. Not just different armies, but a whole new world, different weather, different landscapes, and a completely different way of fighting a war.
And that new challenge? It had a name. King Porus. Now, a lot of other rulers had just bowed down to Alexander, but not Porus. As the king of the Pauravas, he decided to fight. You gotta respect it. He was a proud warrior, and there was no way he was gonna hand over his kingdom without a battle.
Porus picked his spot perfectly. He lined up his forces on the far side of the Hydaspes River. And this wasn't just some little stream. It was monsoon season, so the river was raging. It was deep, it was fast, a total death trap. It was basically a natural fortress. Trying to cross it head-on, that'd be suicide, and both Alexander and Porus knew it. So let's kind of look at the tail of the tape here. When you just look at the numbers, it seems pretty even. Porus might have even had more infantry than Alexander. But the real game changers are down here. Alexander had this incredibly well-trained veteran cavalry. That was his secret sauce. And then you've got the wild card. Up to 200 war elephants. The Macedonians had never, ever seen anything like this. These were basically the tanks of the ancient world. So, you're Alexander. You're facing a river you can't cross, and a powerful enemy with giant war elephants. What do? Well, you come up with a plan so brilliant that historians still call it one of his greatest masterpieces. This is where Alexander's mind for deception just blows you away. He didn't just charge in, no. He played a long, psychological game. For weeks, he just made a ton of noise. He'd march his troops up and down the riverbank, forcing Porus's army to follow his every move, until they were just tired and started to let their guard down. He even put a body double in his own tent to sell the whole act. And then, when the time was right, a huge thunderstorm rolled in, and he used the noise and chaos as cover to sneak his best troops 17 miles upstream, totally undetected. The whole plan was a classic pincer movement, and it was executed perfectly. You can see it here. While Alexander and his elite forces were making that secret crossing way upstream, his general, Treacherous, was back at the main camp still making a bunch of noise and creating a diversion. Porus's army was totally pinned down with no idea that the real danger was about to hit them from the side. Porus figured out something was up and quickly sent a force, led by his own son, to try and stop them. But it was just too little too late. The riverbanks were all muddy and wet, which totally bogged down the Indian chariots, making them useless. Alexander's cavalry, which was bigger and better, just charged and completely wiped him out. Round 1 went to Alexander, no question. Okay, so the jig is up. Porus knows he's been outmaneuvered and now has no choice but to turn his entire army around and face Alexander head-on. The stage was set for this just epic showdown between two totally different ways of fighting. The disciplined, organized Macedonian phalanx against the pure, terrifying power of the Indian war elephants. And then, the war elephants charged. You have to imagine what that was like for the Macedonian soldiers. It must have been like something out of a nightmare. These absolutely massive animals, some with steel on their tusks, just smashing into their lines, throwing men into the air, trampling them, just spreading sheer panic and terror through the ranks. But this is where the incredible training of the Macedonian army really made a difference. They adapted, right there in the middle of the chaos. Instead of running, their light infantry swarmed the elephants, bravely darting in to throw javelins at the drivers, the mahouts, and even at the elephants' eyes. And once a driver was down, that panicked elephant became a weapon of chaos, turning around and trampling Porus's own soldiers. With the Indian army now in total disarray, Alexander unleashed his signature move, the hammer and anvil. His infantry, the phalanx, formed this unbreakable wall, that's the anvil, pinning Porus's army in one spot. And then his elite cavalry came crashing in from the side and the back, that's the hammer, completely smashing the trapped Indian forces between them. The battle was a clear, if incredibly brutal, victory for Alexander. But what happened right after the fighting stopped is what really cemented this battle in legend. It turned it from just another conquest into an amazing story of respect between two powerful leaders. The price of this victory was just staggering. As many as 23,000 of Porus's men were lost. But the Macedonians took a heavy hit too, some of the worst losses of their entire campaign. This battle pushed Alexander's legendary army to its absolute breaking point. The whole time, Alexander had been watching Porus, who was fighting bravely from the top of his elephant right until the very end, when he was wounded and the battle was lost. Alexander was so impressed by his enemy's courage that he actually rode out to meet him personally, hoping to save the life of such a worthy opponent. So Alexander asks the defeated Porus, "How do you want to be treated?" And Porus, proud as ever, gives this incredible reply. No fear, just pure dignity. Alexander was so moved by this that he did exactly what Porus asked. So what was the long-term impact of this unbelievable battle? Well, Alexander didn't just give Porus's kingdom back, he actually gave him more land, making him a powerful and loyal ally. He founded 2 new cities, one for his victory and one in honor of his horse, Bucephalus, who died in the battle. But this was it. This was the end of the line. His army, totally worn out, refused to go any further east, making the Hydaspes the absolute limit of his empire. So the Battle of the Hydaspes was a tactical masterpiece, for sure. But it was also the victory that finally broke his army's will to keep going. And that leaves us with one of history's greatest what-ifs, right? What if they had agreed to march on? What would have happened if Alexander had faced the full might of the other Indian empires? How different would our world look today? It really makes you think.